It seems today we've got an overload of VR information as Valve's Chet Falizek spoke at EGX today, and of course someone spoke about Half-Life 3. And in a Q&A session following his talk on VR, one of the members of the VR game, and his answer was a short and succinct no. And then it was asked again by the same person. He said with a smile, "I said no." So unfortunately, no information other than it's not going to be VR, but moving on, as Oculus have a ton of information for us today. Oculus VR held their second Oculus Connect event today, and they discussed a huge amount of information, and as always, I'm here to give you what I would call the best bits. There is a huge amount of information, as I just said, but I'm going to go through what I feel you guys will be most interested in. Let's begin with the Retail Gear VR, which, as you remember, as I discussed it quite some time ago now, is the Samsung Gear VR, which basically uses Samsung mobile devices. Now, the first version of this device was aimed at developers and enthusiasts. However, they announced there will be a retail version of this particular device. The finalized Gear VR will be launching in November of this year for a pretty cheap price, $99. Looks pretty similar to the one that already exists. However, Samsung and Oculus redesigned the hardware to work with the entire line of flagship Samsung smartphones from 2015. The headset is also 22% lighter and much more comfortable to wear with a redesigned touchpad. Next up is something slightly related, as Oculus has announced that Netflix will be making its way to the Gear VR, and you will be able to download it to existing hardware and of course the actual retail version of it pretty much from today. They also took the time to announce Oculus Video, which will actually include partnerships with some pretty big companies such as, say, 20th Century Fox and Lionsgate, as well as Facebook's 360-degree videos. They are also going to be partnering with Twitch to deliver gaming streams that you can view with avatars of your friends in the same room. So basically, they're making a pretty huge play for portable virtual reality video. So basically watching movies, TV shows, virtual reality, Twitch streams, maybe even YouTube later on down the line. I'd say that's quite a ways down the line, but made an interesting first step. Next up is something that Notch, otherwise known as Marcus Pearson, said wouldn't happen, as the Windows 10 version of Minecraft will be compatible with the Oculus Rift, and this was announced by Oculus and Mojang at the event. The version of the game will be available this spring, with more details coming quote-unquote soon. And there was a comment from Notch himself on Twitter saying, "My opinion on Minecraft / Oculus, neato." So he didn't seem too bothered by it, but of course he did previously say that he thought it wouldn't work on the Oculus. Of course, now that has been proven at least incorrect, as of course Minecraft is now in the hands of Microsoft. I bet some of you are asking though, well, what about other games that aren't Minecraft? Well, there was quite a few announcements. Midway, Namco and Sega have teamed up with Oculus to create Oculus Arcade. This will provide you with classic titles using the Rift, such as, say, Gauntlet, Pac-Man and Sonic the Hedgehog. No release date though. Bossa Studios announced Surgeon Simulator Experience Reality Edition, which will be coming to multiple VR offerings. So basically that means probably Oculus, probably PlayStation VR, and maybe even the HTC Vive as well. Now, the studio has actually accurately mapped the VR controls, and the physics-based gameplay will still retain its difficult comedy elements that we all know and love. Fortunately, no release date for that either, but is coming in the near future. We also have Bullet Train from Epic Games for Oculus VR, and it will use the Oculus Touch controller for locomotion, and the game features a world-scale VR gunfight with gameplay that, quote, weaves in and out of bullet time. What is this game actually about, I hear you ask? Well, basically you take the role of an agent taking part in an infiltration simulation set inside a train station. You will need to master skills such as teleportation, time manipulation, close quarters combat to stop resistance forces. It will allow players to virtually interact with your weapons such as guns, grenades and missiles, and you can even feel them through haptic feedback. What about the Oculus Rift itself, I hear you ask? Do we have a price or release date yet? And the answer is unfortunately no. We still do not have a price or release date at the time of recording, but we are expecting it sometime before April the 1st, as it still is pegged for Q1 2016. However, we did have an announcement of a new SDK, which of the mobile SDK will be released in November, and version 1.0 of Oculus Rift SDK will be released in December this year. So basically, new SDK for developers, but basically is to ensure that developers can create games which will be ready for launch. So there you have it. If you're an aspiring virtual reality developer, there will be a mobile SDK and main SDK. Last thing I want to discuss is the Oculus Ready PC program, which is a partnership between some pretty big names in PC gaming, that being Alienware, Asus and Dell, and each of them will be responsible for creating products which will, quote, guarantee a simple plug-in and go VR experience on PCs that are made by the respective companies. These will be made using Nvidia and Intel hardware, and we're not going to come cheap. Pricing will start at under $1,000. So yeah, not exactly cheap. But of course, given that they're supposed to be Oculus ready, it's hardly surprising. We do know that the recommended specs for the Oculus Rift are not exactly small, shall we say. Just to remind you, you need an Intel i5 4590, 8 gigs of RAM, Nvidia GTX 970 or AMD 290. So yeah, while that wouldn't cost $1,000 now, because obviously the 290's already gone down in price a bit, yada yada yada. You also got a few other bits in there, and of course if it's an Alienware one, you can probably expect it to have a few other shinies, and the fact that, well, it's Alienware, so of course it's going to be more expensive. Naturally, more information on that will be detailed later on. So there you have it. That is what I would call the best bits of the Oculus Connect conference. Was hoping for a price and release date, but unfortunately not. But it does seem they are pretty much on target for a Q1 release, as I said, with the release of these SDK. They're giving developers tools to at least start working on some games, and of course getting some pretty interesting sounding partnerships in the pipeline. I really like the sound of Bullet Train. It sounds really interesting. Of course, how well it actually works, we'll have to see. Regardless of all that, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.